All right, good evening, folks, and welcome back to Wilderness Wargaming. Tonight we're going to take a look at the Battle Sisters, specifically why they're having problems. And of course, I'm looking at them because they're my favorite army, but also because I think that some of their problems are relative to other armies as well. So we're going to take a little dive into this, get an examination of the Sisters and where they're at. As always, please remember to like, subscribe, comment down below. Click the notifications bell for more great content for Wilderness Wargaming. It would really, really help us out as I continue to try to get this channel to take off. Okay, so where's the problem with the Sisters? Well, okay, so the Sisters have four basic things that I think are giving them a problem. Melee, changes to melt weapons, points costs on a few select units, and leaders. And we're going to go over these in some detail. Now, before I go into this, the Sisters are not by any means the bottom army in the game. There's at least 5 other armies that I would say are below them. Death Guard is down there, Tau, Leagues of Votan, a couple other ones I can't remember off the top of my head, but they're definitely below them in terms of win rate, and that are definitely struggling more. But Sisters are not even, I don't think, in the middle third of armies. Maybe right around the border between the bottom third and the middle third. And I think they also suffer from a little bit of Sisters seem to perpetually have a perception that they're stronger than they actually are. And they came out in 8th edition. People were kind of oohing and ahhing over how awesome they were, which they were. It was awesome to see this massive refresh of the Sisters line and the Codex. And at that time, they had 2 really strong options. They had the Valorous Heart and the Bloody Rose. The Valorous Heart was the durability option, Bloody Rose was the melee, and then you could also kind of supplement that with Ebb and Chalice, because that was back when you could have multiple factions, and the Ebb and Chalice was good for a secondary faction, maybe in a patrol or something like that, because the Canonist could take the Warlord trait for that, and that was a really great alternate Warlord trait to have. Now, 9th edition came out. They got even more additional stuff, like an additional refresh on top of the refresh. But the faction balance the sub-faction balance got changed again. It was improved somewhat. Bloody Rose was toned down a little bit. Valorous Heart was toned down a little bit too much because it fell right off the radar. And then they lost the ability to take multiple sub-factions. That Ebon Chalice just wasn't as good because all it really gave you was double Sacred Rites, and that was, something you could get on your own. You just had to get it as randomly. So that wasn't that good. Argent Shroud did get significantly better, but not good enough to overshadow Bloody Rose and the other 2, Sacred Rose and Order of Our Martyr Lady, have consistently been non-performers. Now, briefly, Valorous Heart did make something of a comeback during the era of, I think it was Nephilim, when they had Armor of Contempt, because they went from reducing some armor penetration to reducing all armor penetration by 1, and then they got immunity to wound rerolls on top of that, which was pretty fantastic. But once that was gone, Bloody Rose came right back, and Bloody Rose, for all the last edition, had the monopoly. They had the best trait with +1 attack, +1 armor penetration on charge, when receiving a charge, and on heroic interventions. They had probably the best relic, Beneficence, the super slash chainsword. In fact, that's probably the weakest thing that they had. They had a great stratagem, and they had a great warlord trait, which was not only great in its own right, but it was the second melee-centric one, which was important because if you were taking Morvenval, and you pretty much were taking Morvenval, she was already taking the one really good warlord trait that everybody wanted with Righteous Rage, so getting Blazing Ire from Bloody Rose was very important. Now, in 10th edition, all that stuff is gone. There's no more sub-factions, and all that Bloody Rose good stuff has gone, along with the Sacred Rites. And that has really, really hurt the Sisters in melee. Let's take a look at why. Now, we're looking at points here. Okay, so first of all, if we look at the stats in melee, and we'll start off here with Morvenval, her Lance of Illumination, just for example. Looks pretty good. 5 attacks, weapon skill 2 up, strength 8, AP minus 2, damage 3. And as long as she's leading a unit, she gets full rerolls too. So that means she's almost always going to hit with all the attacks. And she's going to have a high chance of getting a wound, even if she's wounding on a 5. Because she's getting full rerolls. And you can always plug miracle dice in there, and then you're going to dish out 3 damage. So that's, that's pretty good on the face of it. Same thing if we go down here. Now, to the Canoness, okay, though, if we compare, we're going to take a look here, and she's still got 3 options. She's got the Blessed Blade, the Chainsword, the Power Weapon, 3, 5, and 4 attacks, respectively, hitting on 2s, strength 6, 3, or 4, AP minus 2, or else 0 for the Chainsword, damage 2, or else 1. So this looks reasonably balanced, not that bad. But keep in mind that in the last edition, this would have come with probably exploding 6s, which would have helped the Chainsword a lot, and the Power Weapon to a degree. Would have helped all of them, but especially the Chainsword. Or she could have had a +1 to advance and charge if the player so wanted, which would help her get into melee. She could have had a Warlord trait. Either she could have had Righteous Rage if Morphin Vow for some reason wasn't on the table, or she could have had Blazing Ire. And then if she was Bloody Rose, she could have had a +1 attack and +1 to armor penetration on both the charge, receiving a charge, and heroic intervention. So pretty awesome. Okay, all that's gone now, and she's contending with significant increases in toughness, particularly with heavy vehicles. When you're already kind of stuck wounding on 5s, and if you're saying hitting a Land Raider, it's going to be wounding on 6s because that's a toughness of 12. This is a strength of 6. You're already struggling, and you're not getting the same rerolls you used to get. Now you're still getting your hit rerolls, but nothing on the wounds. And there's not too many ways around that. And you can use miracle dice, but those are a limited resource. In fact, in the old edition, you could have even taken Ardent Shroud and gotten a 1-hit or wound reroll per phase, and then you had a lot of stratagems. So your melee is not benefiting from the same kind of power that you were benefiting from in the old edition. And you're contending with much tougher targets. And part of the thing was that the Sisters were always a melee army, because if you think about the nature of the Sisters, their weapons are, with the exception of the heavy bolter, the main guns for the Castigator and the Exorcist, and of course the Hunter Killer missile, everything is 24 inches or less. So that means they were going to try to get into melee, and with such a great melee subfaction, they were very heavily dependent on melee, and they have been kind of stripped of that with nothing else to really make up for it. Now, if we take a look at the actual units, let's look at the Repentia. They were the kind of the terror of the melee. Now they retain the same eviscerator stuff, and the Repentia Superior, who actually serves a purpose now, and despite going down to just 1 wound, I really think she should be 2, but whatever. And the Penitent Eviscerators kept the same stat lines before. It still hits on a 4, because previously it was -1 to hit. Now it's just weapons go 4 up. It's still strength 6, still AP minus 2, still damage 2, and you still have 2 attacks. Well, used to be you could jack this up to 3 attacks even if you weren't Bloody Rose. I forget how. I want to say it was either the Preacher or the Missionary that could allow you to do that. Or one of their hymns, actually. And I might be confusing the 8th and the 9th edition. Either way, there were ways to get it up. But then you also could take Bloody Rose. That would take it to AP minus 3, and it would give you 3 attacks. So Bloody Rose, that meant you had a 50% increase in your effectiveness on the charge, on Repentia. Okay? These guys now are just absolutely struggling. They're not getting that boost, and they can't, and with the much lower strength, even with the reroll wounds on the charge, they're just not dishing out the kind of punishment they used to. Now, the rerolls do help, but remember, you're rerolling into a 5 or a 6 to wound, as opposed to, a lot of times you were rolling 5s against vehicles before, but rarely a 6. And now you're also facing the prospect of things like, toughness 6 custodians or toughness 7 custodian terminators or dreadnoughts, things like. There's plenty of smaller vehicles that have been jacked up in terms of toughness, even if we're not talking about the toughness 10 and toughness 12 monsters. Now, on a little more positive note, let's look at the Zephyrim here, okay? Now, the real purpose of the Zephyrim is also still going to be kind of the delivery system for Celestine, who is still quite good. Although her strength is kind of limited, too. It's only strength 6. But you're getting advance and charges for yourself and Celestine, who you're going to escort. And you're getting +1 to strength. That gets Celestine up to 7, so that's pretty handy. These ones are in significantly better shape than the Repentia. In fact, partly just because they're faster. And they have some additional benefits here. They're not as hard to deliver. But also remember, you're still, even getting your strength up to 7, you're still going to be struggling. At least you won't be wounding toughness 12 tanks on a 6, but 7 is not that much better than a 6. If we look at some of the other ones, I searched it wrong. Oh, here we are, Sisters Novitate Squad. Okay, we're looking at weapon skill 4, strength 4, AP 0. They do get hit rerolls, and they get, if they're on an objective, and hit rerolls of 1 all the time, and they can advance and charge. These girls are 90 points, and it's not entirely clear what you really need them for. You can give them lethal hits if you put a Palatine with them, which is pretty nice, but it's not clear why you would need them when you could also just take more Sacrosancts. Let's take a look at them. Okay, the Sacrosancts remain, again, very similar. Now their strength is capped out at 5, but they are tougher than everyone else. They have they lost their 2-up save, but they do have the 4-up invul on them. And you can put in an Image of Fire with them to get back your 2-up save, or you can put Hospitalar with them, and that will give them a 5-up Feel No Pain, which will definitely help them against 1 damage. You can also put a Palatine with them, and that will make them -1 to wound, along with the Palatine herself. And what you can do is, you also put the Hospitalar. You can put the Mantle of Ophilia on the Palatine and have her soak up hits, and then have the Hospitalar heal her. So they're not too bad as being still a tanky unit, although the loss of these 2-up save it definitely hurts, and it's not clear why that would be taken away. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because they do have essentially the Storm Shields. Used to be that that Terminators had a 2-up save, and then if they had a Storm Shield, they got an additional +1 to save on top of that, whereas Sacrosancts got only the 2, and no extra armor save bonus from the shield. So I think they could have at least kept their 2-up save. And then finally, let's take a look at Arcoflagellants. A little bit fast, similar to the Repentia. 4 attacks, weapon skill 4, strength 5, AP 0. Now these ones start to look a little bit stronger just because of volume of attacks. There is no AP on them. You can boost their AP up to 6. Strength is only 5, so not as good as the Repentia. But there seems to be some view that maybe these guys are a little better. And then we can also take a look at Crusaders. And they are inferior offensively to Repentia or Zephyrim, but they are more durable than either. They're comparable to Sacrosancts. Now, they like a shooting attack, but they're also cheaper, and that makes Crusaders at the moment pretty good, especially since they also have this nice feel no pain against mortals, so that will help out against devastating wounds and things like that, or have psychic heavy armies. But none of this stuff is, if you can see, the strengths are consistently quite low. Morphin Vol is the only one with a really high strength. Celestine is 6. She only goes up to 7. She does have good armor penetration. Damage is still okay, and she also doesn't have that many attacks. She only has 5, and they're not as good as Morphin Vols, even though she costs more points. Her big value is really in how difficult she is to kill and how mobile she is. Now, this hurts the sisters a lot because almost all armies are struggling with melee. I don't think custodians are, and a few others, but many armies, Space Marines, are suffering a similar problem. They are suffering from melee being difficult, not as effective now. And the sisters were very much a melee-focused army with Bloody Rose. Losing that, and they haven't really picked up too much to compensate. So that brings us to our second problem. Okay, Melta. If we take a look here, I will blow this up for you. Okay, let's take a look at our weapons. These are the sisters, pretty much their common weapons. There's a lot that aren't here. A lot of the pistols are not here. Combi weapons aren't here. But your big 3 are here. Bolt guns, Melta guns, flamers, and their heavier equivalent, plus, of course, the Stormbolter. So let's take a look at this. The Melta gun hasn't fared too badly. It's 12-inch range, just like before. Stat line's the same, except picked up point of strength. Okay, not bad. But then we look at the multi-Melta, and this is something that people are well aware of. It lost 6 inches of range, even though it picked up a point of strength. Well, this is a big problem for Retributors. You have to now get within 9 inches to get your Melta bonus, and you have to you have to take additional risks with Overwatch and things like this. Overwatch has changed. And remember that Retributors are only toughness 3 single wound models in a 5-member squad. Okay, so this makes it hard to mass up your multi-Melta fire. As it's otherwise hard to mass up multi-Meltas. Besides a Retributor squad, you can have one multi-Melta in a Battle Sister squad. You can have a twin-linked one on an Immolator. And you can have up to 3 in a squad of Paragon Warsuits. And that's about the only ways you can get it. The ability to mass up those multi-Meltas is just a lot more. It's still there, but it's a lot more vulnerable than it used to be because of the shorter range. Now, heavy bolters are looking pretty good. That is kind of a silver lining. And I would say take one, if you can take Retributors, take one squad with heavy bolters and park them in the back and use them that way, and maybe stay away from the multi-Meltas, at least for now. Because the heavy bolter profile is pretty attractive for killing infantry. Now, the other problem is this that hurts. Because the multi-Meltas are only went up to strength 9, they're having a hard time wounding heavier vehicles now. They kept the armor penetration, they've kept the damage, but they're not wounding as well. There are sources of rerolls. There are, of course, miracle dice. But it's harder to pump out those wounds with the heavies. And it is, essentially, you can forget about getting that +1 to wound on our Retributor squad because they're too small. If you killed one Retributor, there's a high chance you've killed them all. There might be one girl left with a multi-Melta, and that's it. Now, that was part of the overall decision to limit sisters to the box sizes, or limit every army to what comes in the box. But this is not a good choice because all the Retributor squad really is regular old sisters except that it's half as many of them, and they are all with heavy weapons, and multi-Melta is an option. For some reason, there's no multi-Melta in the basic sister box. But they're all interchangeable. They should have kept all of the squads at 5 and 10 as an available size. And they should have also probably, I think, kept the regular sisters at 10 and 20, 15 and 20 as well. But that's neither here nor there. They really were more restrictive on sisters' squad sizes than they needed to be. Now, the regular melta gun does look a little bit more attractive. It doesn't cost extra points now, so you can put these on Dominions, and you can combat squad and put them in an immolator and get that benefit. And even though it's only one shot, and also because you have if you don't do that, if you keep the squad together as one, you have those ablative girls with the bolt guns. So all you have to do is lose one, and your melta guns are hitting on twos, which is very valuable. So I think Dominions are really the better deal right now compared to Retributors, and that's the way I'm going to be probably going, is 2 squads of Dominions with melta guns and 1 squad of Retributors with heavy bolters. Okay. So that pretty much covers the problem with melta. Now, that leads into, and I'm going to break, before I get to points here, I'm going to correct myself, and we're going to insert here. We're going to add to our little list the detachment rule. Okay, the detachment rule, if we look at the sisters index, okay, each time you add 1, you make an attack, add 1 to the hit roll if the unit's below starting strength, and add 1 to the wound roll if it's below half strength. The purpose of this ability, if the unit has starting strength of 1, is considered to be below its starting strength with lost 1 wounds. Now this, that's how it conceptually works. So, what's the problem with this? Well, the problem with this is that sisters are not very tough. They're only toughness 3. In fact, they're most comparable to Craft Worlds or Drakari. They're toughness 3 with a good armor save. And that is up just like, say, a Dire Avenger. Oh, hey, look at that. Well, Dire Avengers save 4+, toughness 3. How about a Drakari? Cabalite Warriors also toughness 3, save 4+. Cabalite Warriors, though, move 8 compared to 7 for the Dire Avengers. And, of course, 6 for the sisters. Okay, all of them move 6 except for the ones that are jacked up with jetpacks and special abilities like the Devonifuge. Your Battle Sister Squad moves 6. In fact, Dire Avengers and Sisters used to be exactly the same number of points, 11, and they were very good comparisons to each other. Now the Dire Avengers pulled ahead a little bit. They have a better invulnerable save. They don't have the weapon selections that Sisters do, but their baseline weapons are excellent with assault lethal hits. And they have somewhat better melee options on the Exarch than the Sister Superior does, at least in my opinion. Now, they lack the special weapon and the heavy weapon, but they are also now a little more expensive. It's 140 points for 10 of these compared to 110 for Sisters. Drakari, Cabalite Warriors, same thing. These are probably even a better comparison for Sisters now. They're faster, slightly worse armor save, but they carry the special, the heavy. And their melee for the Sergeant is not quite as impressive. Now, but here's the problem for the Sisters. So this 10-member squad isn't likely to lose just one sister who comes under attack. It's likely to lose 4 or 5 in one go. Which means that in order to get that +1 to hit, you're losing significant amounts of the squad's baseline firepower. Yes, it makes the sisters get a little bit more dangerous as they lose, but they have to lose. But they end up having to lose a lot. +1 to hit and +1 to wound is pretty good, but by that time the squad is down to 4 members, which is probably the squad leader, the special, the heavy, and and one other one, and that's assuming that you were somehow able to limit there. There's nothing automatically stopping it there. The enemy might just keep blowing right on through. This is one of the reasons why Martyred Lady was never that popular. You have to lose models in order to make the remaining ones better, and that's just not a winning thing you can build around things. And they not only lost their melee buffs, but the Retributors are now much weaker, and they can't really take advantage of this detachment rule. It could potentially be a little handy. It is a little handier with tougher units like the Crusaders or the. Actually, I don't know if it even applies to Crusaders now that I'm thinking about it because they're not technically sisters. So let's take a look up here. Can they take advantage of it? No, they're not Adepta Sororitas models. They're part of the army, but they're not an Adepta Sororitas, so they can't get it. Sacrosancts can, and they're the ones probably best to take advantage of it. But for most sister squads, the problem is you're going to lose far more taking casualties than you're going to gain from. Just jumping all over the place here. From the bonuses. Okay, now let's move on and let's take a look at points. Okay, and this is where things really start to get a little bit ugly. Now, it's not that everything is overcosted. Let's take a look at their points chart. Okay, and we'll zoom in just a little bit so we can see a little better. Okay, now we only took one little nerf to the Exorcist, that which was not unwarranted because across the board, indirect fire was quick. And I would say the Exorcist is definitely still worth 170. In fact, the Exorcist and along with the Castigator are two of your strong units now, and I would take those. But let's take a look at what we're getting charged here. Okay, 150 models for Arcoflagellants, just for starters. Okay, what if we go down to the Eldari list? Remember that they do have the Extremis trigger word, but the only thing that they have are 4 strength 5 melee attacks. No shooting, nothing like that. Well, what costs 150 for the Eldari? 10 striking scorpions. Striking scorpion also has 4 attacks. Strength is only 4. AP is 0, but he's weapon skill 3 up. But he also comes with an Exarch that either has a scorpion's claw or a biting blade. And whenever they're targeting you, they get devastating wounds. So, yeah, I'd say these guys are at least equal to and probably better than Arcoflagellants. But let's get even a little bit more embarrassing. Let's go back to our Retributors that we've been talking about, because it isn't enough that they have lost range on the multi-meltas and become more vulnerable to Overwatch and things like that. Oh no. How much does a Retributor squad cost, you may ask? Oh, 130 points. Well, they could have 4 multi-meltas or 4 heavy bolters, right? That's fair. They cost the same as in Minion Squad, which is 130. Hey, that's fair, right? Well, is it? The Minion Squad doesn't have the same special weapons, but it has 6 extra sisters with bolt guns and a simulacrum. That seems like, okay, I can see that. The heavy weapons bring it up there until we go down here to our Space Marine list and take a look here. And let's take a look at the Devastator squad. 5 models, 120 points. 10 points less than a Retributor squad. Well, the Retributors must have something awesome that Devastators don't have. Mustn't they? Let's take a look. Reroll wounds of 1. That's pretty good. And they get a miracle die after faith twice. They can have 2 cherubs. Okay. But they can have up to they can have up to 4 multi-meltas or 4 heavy flavors or 4 heavy bolters or any combination. What can those Marines have? Well, let's see. First of all, they get ignore cover when they stand still, which is pretty good. I don't know if it's better than rerolling World of 1, but it's certainly good. And they get 1 free 6 per battle. They can also take Ablative Marines, although taking casualties doesn't help them any, but you can protect your Marines with other Marines. And look at their range weapons, though. They have heavy bolters. Oh, sure enough, same stat line. Multi-meltas. Oh, yep, sure enough, same stat line. Do they have heavy flamers? It doesn't look like they can take heavy flamers, but that's okay. They also get grav cannons that have the same range as the old multi-melta, and they have anti-vehicle 2-up. Oh my. And las cannons. Well, these only get one shot, but look at this. They're up to strength 12 AP minus 3. So comparable to the multi-melta, but with more than twice the range now. And of course, they got missile launchers. They do. They also have plasma cannons and heavy flamers. They're just not listed on the chart. Oh, wow. Okay. And yet, on top of that, a Devastator Marine is the same movement rate, toughness 4, and 2 wounds. Now, I don't see anything here that justifies a Retributor squad being 10 points more than a Devastator squad that is a higher toughness and has twice as many wounds. Nothing at all. In fact, I'm not sure the Dominion squad should even be as expensive as a Devastator squad. This just doesn't strike me as quite right, because they're also 10 wounds. They have special weapons, and they have only toughness 3. Now they do have that pregame scout move, but that's not that important. That's not that valuable. It's useful, certainly, but it's not the end of the world valuable. Okay. Let's come up here to our points again. Okay. So I would say that's the first one. Retributors are wildly overcosted, and that only adds to the difficulty of getting useful heavy weapons into the army. Another one, Paragon Warsuits, 3 models for 240 points. Now these ones you're going to put them with more of involved, because otherwise either they or she get the full rerolls. But that, and you're looking at, really, this is a 375 point unit here. Now they do have some pretty decent weaponry. They have grenade launchers, which would be strength 9, and then they can get up to strength 12 with their mace, attacking vehicles. And with 4 rerolls, that weapon skill 4-up isn't too bad. But they're also big and they're easy to target. And the real question is are these where you want to spend your points? This is pretty dang high. Now, granted, we're no longer having to spend extra points for the multi-meltas. That helps. But these still strike me as a little overpriced. I might drop them by 5 points a model, so 225. The Retributors, I think, should be dropped down to probably about 105. Repentia, 150 points, 15 points a model. What are these things bringing to the table these days with no Bloody Rose benefits? 150 points per model. Now, if they still had the Bloody Rose stat line, sure. Yeah, I can see that. But there's definitely some of the key units from the old edition that are now overpriced. And that brings us to our 0.5 liters. And this is one that's definitely a problem across many armies, because I've seen it, like in my Salamanders, that I can't lead the appropriate units with Adrex Agatone or Vulcan Heastan. Okay. And I've seen it even in my Crafters army that I'm playing. Autark Wayleaper, for some reason, cannot lead the Warp Spiders or Swooping Hawks, which is insane. Okay. Morven Val can lead only Paragon Warsuits. Well, I kind of understand that, because that's what she's in. But Sacrosancts are supposed to be bodyguards, and they always were. And she always led them in the end of previous editions. Now, you can't. You could have probably put Sacrosancts here. Let's move on to Canonus. For some reason, can only lead Battle Sister Squad and Sacrosancts. Why not Novitates? Why not Retributors? Why not Dominions? Because the Palatine can, except not Retributors for some reason. Junith, or if you take her, same thing. Why could she not go with Dominions? At least. Take a look at the Missionary here. Who can the Missionary lead? Arcoflagellants, Battle Sisters, which, okay, Crusaders, Sisters, Novitates, kind of makes sense, but why not Repentia? You would think that he'd want to be more with them. Why can you put him with Battle Sisters, but not with Repentia, where sustained hits would be pretty handy? St. Celestine. Now, she can only lead Seraphim Zephyrim. That's not so bad. That we can live with. And realistically, it's going to be Zephyrim anyhow. Seraphim are, I think that this is an action-doing squad right now. I don't have a whole lot to say about Seraphim, other than they might be worthwhile to take as an action doer because of their mobility, but I wouldn't call them as a damage dealer. Triumphs of St. Catherine. Okay, why can this thing only lead regular sisters? Why not sacrosancts? Why not dominions? Easter Third Agatha Dolmen. Okay. Can give devastating wounds. Now, these guys used to suck. They were worthless in the last edition. I never bothered by the model. Now I have it. Because I do think that she's more worthwhile. But and the devastating wounds would be great on sacrosancts. But then you can't take the Palatine. And why would you put her in any of the others? Because they're not melee squads. Why can't you put her with the Novatates? Now, maybe if you have more than one squad of Palatines, of Sacrosancts, I don't know. Maybe if you had a smaller squad, you could put them with her. But there's a conflict there. Taking her is counterproductive. And 3 out of these 4 units are not appropriate for them to lead because you're not getting value out of the auto tapestry. Imagifier. Boo gives you a 4-up invuln save or a save of 2-up. Okay, now this is not bad. Who she can lead is not bad. The main problem she has is that Sacrosancts shouldn't need this. In fact, she probably shouldn't even be leading Sacrosancts. She should be with the other ones. They should already have their 2-up. And you can't take her along with a Hospitaller. And so you got 2 competing, neither of which is really awesome because the Hospitallars feel no pain is just not that useful on 1-wound models, unless they're getting shot with damage 1 only. Well, that's not entirely true. You can do the Palatine with the mantle trick and then have the Hospitaller heal her and use her to tank. So that's one way to do it, but the unit by itself, not so much. Dialogus. Automatically makes 6 acts of faith. Okay, this one's not too bad. And she's probably would be my pick to put with Retributors. So this is pretty good variety here and can be attached even in the event the other ones are attached. The Dialogus is not the shoe does not fit on the Dialogus. Who has come a long way. She was terrible in 8th edition, got a lot better in 9th. And looking like she's staying strong. Preacher, now also amusingly to me, now costing more than the Missionary and actually being better. +1 to wound. Oh, that's awesome. And he's a Zealot, so he's good in melee himself. And he Archiflagrant, Crusaders, Sisters Novate. Okay, why not Repentia? Why can't you put him with Repentia? Why can't you put him with a... Why can you only put him with Novatates but not any of the other ones? These are all appropriate for him to lead, but why would you not be able to lead Repentia or Sacrosancts? It's just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Hospitaller. The restrictions are not too bad here. The main problem with Hospitaller is that it's 1-wound model, so giving them a 5-up feel no pain isn't that useful, and it conflicts with taking an Imagifier. Now, okay, yeah, we don't want to stack up all kind of vulnerability, anti-vulnerability buffs, but we're still talking about toughness 3 1-wound models. It's not like stacking up buffs on Custodians. Dogmata. Okay, the Dogmata is... Okay, why is she not able to lead Repentia? Why is she not able to lead Novatates? This doesn't make any sense at all. Why... the objective control could be kind of useful on a backline Retributor squad, but I don't know why she can't lead Novatates or Repentia. I mean, Repentia are kind of her deep. But a lot of the leaders are really just mismatched. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever that a Canonist can't take charge of a Dominion squad. It makes no sense at all that a lot of these can't lead a Repentia squad. I understand they don't want to create these terror buffed units, but I mean, the whole point of having leaders is kind of to buff units now. And also, I mean, you already took away all the things that really made Repentia terrifying, so why can they not be led by the leaders that would be most helpful to them? I don't know. But anyhow, these are my 5 points. Now, I don't think any of this stuff is unsolvable, and I don't think it'd even take a huge amount of modifications to make this a little bit better. What I would do for a lot of this stuff is I think that the leaders, changing the leaders, maybe more broad leader combinations, could really help out the melee in some cases. I also think that could be helped out by flipping the detachment rule. It should be +1 to wound when you've lost a model, and +1 to hit when you've lost half, not more than half, or else +1 to armor penetration. Now, I'll be willing to wait for more detachments. I don't think we need to just scrap the detachment rule. There'll be more in the codex. That's fine. Points are straightforward. There need to be some cuts, which I already discussed. Retributors being the most prominent. I think they need a 25-point cut for the unit. 5 points per model reduction. They should be 105. So 105 would be 21 points per model. That's still that's still Space Marine level costs. They're pretty close. And they should get Ablative Sisters, and those ones should be more like 15 or 16 points per model. So another, maybe not even that much. They're just bulk gun ones. Maybe less. And then finally, the Melta, how do we deal with that? I think just giving the Melta its range back would be enough. I'm kind of okay with its strength only being 9. Maybe 10 would be a little more appropriate. But I understand they want to make tanks more survivable, and I don't want to just neutralize that by jacking up all the anti-tank. So I think that some careful targeted improvements at leader stuff, points, flip around to the detachment rule, give the multi-Melta its range back. And for dedicated melee stuff, I think that the other things that I've mentioned would start to help melee out a little bit. But that's what I think are the right things to do for the sisters. But anyhow, thanks for watching. Once again, please remember to like, subscribe, comment down below, click the notifications bell for more great content for Older Wargaming. And we'll see you back here very soon. Bye-bye.